They say that on Halloween night, when the wind moves slow and the fog rolls in thick across the valley, some villages that disappeared long ago come back for a while. The traveler had been walking for hours. The moon hung low in the sky, pale and blurred behind a thin sheet of clouds. The road beneath his boots was soft with fallen leaves, and the only sound was the steady rhythm of his own footsteps. He wasn't running from anything, not anymore. He had simply wanted quiet. A place where time moved slowly and the noise of the world faded into something softer. As the night deepened, a faint orange glow appeared far ahead through the mist. It flickered gently, like a candle struggling to stay alive. The traveler stopped for a moment, listening. There was no wind, no sound of water or animals. Only silence, that strange, endless kind of silence that feels alive. He stepped forward. The path bent between two crooked trees, their branches touching above him like fingers trying to hold something invisible. The glow grew brighter. Soon, he could make out the shape of a small village resting in the valley below. Old stone cottages leaned toward each other, roofs heavy with moss. A narrow stream ran through the middle, reflecting the dim orange light of lanterns hanging on doorways. Smoke drifted from one chimney, thin, pale, and steady. The traveler frowned softly. He had studied the map before sunset. There was supposed to be nothing here, just an empty stretch of road leading to the mountains. And yet, there it was. A living village breathing quietly in the fog. He adjusted the strap of his pack and began walking downhill. Each step made the leaves sigh beneath his boots. As he entered the edge of the village, he noticed something peculiar. Every door was open, but no one was inside. Candles burned gently in every window, but no shadows moved behind the glass. He whispered to himself, barely a breath. Maybe they're celebrating. His voice felt strange in the air, like sound didn't belong here. He walked further down the lane. A sign creaked above a doorway, the Hollow Lantern Inn. The paint was faded, but the door was warm with light. He pushed it open. Inside, the fire burned low in the hearth, throwing soft gold across the wooden floor. A single cup of tea sat on the table, steam still curling above it. The traveler hesitated, then smiled faintly. Maybe someone just stepped out. He placed his pack on the bench and sat down. The warmth of the fire spread gently through the room. For a moment, he simply listened to the crackle of wood, the faint whistle of wind slipping through the old walls, the distant hoot of an owl outside. It was peaceful. Almost too peaceful. He closed his eyes. But just as sleep began to blur his thoughts, a voice drifted softly from somewhere behind him, calm, distant, and echoing through the quiet inn. "You came a long way, traveler." He turned, slowly. There was no one there. Only the fire, burning low and steady. He rose from his seat, heartbeat steady but slow, and looked around the empty room. The voice had sounded calm, not threatening, almost welcoming. He whispered back, "Who's there?" No reply. Only the soft hiss of the fire. He moved to the window. Outside, the fog had thickened. The village looked softer now, blurred by the mist, almost like a painting that someone had forgotten to finish. And then he noticed something else. The candles in the windows across the lane were flickering in perfect rhythm. One by one, they dimmed, and then brightened again. Like the whole village was breathing. He stepped back slowly, feeling the wooden floor creak beneath him. The fire gave a gentle pop, scattering tiny sparks that floated in the air like fireflies. And for some reason, the traveler smiled. He didn't feel afraid. Only curious. Perhaps this was what he had been searching for all along. A place that existed between the world of the living and the world of dreams. He sat back down, the cup of tea still warm in his hands. Outside, the fog whispered softly against the windows. Somewhere far away, a church bell rang, slow, steady, and distant. The traveler took a sip. The tea tasted faintly of smoke, herbs, and something sweet he couldn't name. And as he sat there, surrounded by the quiet heartbeat of the forgotten village, his eyes grew heavy. Somewhere, beyond the fog, faint footsteps began to echo, calm, measured, and coming closer. The footsteps outside the inn moved slowly, not hurried or threatening, but steady, almost deliberate. The traveler didn't move at first. He simply listened. Each step echoed softly, muffled by the fog. Then, the sound stopped. He rose quietly and walked to the window again. The street outside was empty, blanketed in mist that shimmered faintly beneath the moonlight. The lanterns swayed gently in the wind, their light breaking through the fog in golden halos. And there, at the far end of the lane, a shadow moved. Not a human shape exactly. More like a ripple, as if the air itself had taken form. He blinked once. The figure was gone. The traveler whispered under his breath, "Perhaps I'm dreaming already." He smiled softly at the thought. There was something comforting about that idea, that maybe the night had simply folded around him like a blanket, drawing him into some forgotten dream. He turned away from the window, settled back near the fire, and let his thoughts drift. But the quiet didn't last long. A soft knock echoed from the door. Just once. Then silence again. He hesitated, then opened it gently. The fog poured in like slow-moving smoke, cool against his skin. No one stood there, but at his feet lay a small, woven basket covered with a thin cloth. He crouched down and lifted the cloth carefully. Inside, he found a warm loaf of bread, a slice of cheese, and a small folded note. The handwriting was delicate, written in dark ink that shimmered faintly under the lantern light. It said only, "Welcome home." He stared at the words for a long time. The ink looked fresh, not old or faded. Home. He hadn't heard that word in a long while. He brought the basket inside, set it beside the fire, and leaned back in the chair. "Maybe the village isn't as empty as it looks," he whispered. Outside, the fog moved like breath across the windows. The traveler began to eat slowly, feeling the warmth of the bread and cheese anchor him to the moment. Every bite tasted faintly sweet, like honey mixed with smoke. He thought about the voice he'd heard earlier. Calm, distant, gentle. He thought about the footsteps and the note. And for some reason, instead of fear, he felt gratitude. He closed his eyes again, letting the warmth of the fire and the taste of the bread settle deep within him. In the distance, the faint sound of a flute began to play, a slow, haunting melody that carried through the fog like a whisper of memory. He listened closely. The tune was simple, repeating the same few notes over and over, but each note felt heavy with emotion, like it was trying to tell a story he had forgotten. Without realizing it, tears rolled gently down his cheeks. Not from sadness, but from something deeper, a feeling of belonging he couldn't explain. He stood, following the sound of the flute. It led him out of the inn, down the cobblestone path, past the shuttered houses. The mist thickened, wrapping him in its cool embrace. The flute grew louder. And then, there it was. At the edge of the stream, a small wooden bridge arched over the water, and beneath it flickered the faint orange glow of a lantern. He walked closer, heart steady, eyes calm. And as he stepped onto the bridge, the air shifted. The fog parted just enough to reveal shapes moving in the distance, faint, translucent, shimmering softly. They looked like villagers. Men, women, and children walking slowly, carrying candles, their faces gentle and serene. But they weren't alive. He could see the light of the lanterns pass through them like sunlight through smoke. And yet, they smiled at him. One of them, an old woman with silver hair glowing faintly, nodded and lifted her candle slightly, as if to greet him. Then, she turned and began walking toward the church at the far end of the road. The others followed, their footsteps silent, their candles flickering in unison. The traveler watched quietly, heart filled with awe. Not fear, never fear. Only wonder. He followed them slowly, keeping a respectful distance. The sound of the flute continued, now joined by the gentle toll of a bell that seemed to echo not from the church, but from the sky itself. The procession moved gracefully through the fog, the candles lighting the path like stars on earth. At the church gate, the figures stopped. The old woman turned again, meeting the traveler's eyes. For a brief moment, he thought he could hear her voice, soft, warm, like wind through leaves. Rest easy. This is your night too. Then she stepped through the door, and one by one, the others followed. When the last candle disappeared inside, the sound faded. The bell went silent. The fog drifted apart. The traveler stood alone again beneath the pale moonlight. But something inside him felt different, lighter, as if a weight he didn't know he carried had quietly lifted. He returned to the inn, closed the door behind him, and sat once more by the fire. The basket was gone now. The cup of tea had been refilled. He smiled faintly. Perhaps the village wasn't haunted at all. Perhaps it was simply waiting for those who had lost their way to find peace again. The wind outside sighed gently through the cracks of the inn. The traveler leaned back, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Thank you." The fire crackled softly, the warmth wrapped around him, and the fog outside deepened into quiet night. And as his breathing slowed, the village seemed to exhale with him, calm, rhythmic, and eternal. When the traveler woke, the fire had burned low to glowing embers. Soft light crept through the window, but it wasn't dawn, it was still night. The mist outside had turned silver under the moon, moving like ocean waves across the village. He sat quietly, listening. Somewhere in the distance, water trickled gently, and the faint hum of wind passed through the old wood of the inn. Everything felt calm, like time itself was resting. He rose slowly, wrapped his cloak around his shoulders, and stepped outside. The air was cool and sweet, carrying the faint scent of pine and smoke. The village lay silent, but alive. Every candle burned low, steady and golden. The stream glimmered under the pale light, and somewhere far off, a bell rang again, once, and then again, slower this time. He followed the sound. The road curved past the bridge and led to the church he had seen before. The heavy wooden doors were slightly open. A faint light glowed within. As he entered, he found the pews empty, yet the air carried whispers, soft and distant, like many voices speaking at once but too quietly to understand. He walked to the front, where an old book rested on the altar. Its pages moved slightly in the breeze, as though it was breathing. He placed his hand gently upon it. The pages stilled. The handwriting inside was delicate, familiar, and though he couldn't recall where he had seen it before, something deep in him recognized it. The words read, "We do not haunt this place. We remember it." He exhaled slowly. Memories, that was it. This village wasn't trapped between worlds, it was the memory itself. A moment preserved, relived each Halloween night. He turned another page. Those who wander and have forgotten their peace, find it here. He smiled faintly, whispering to himself, "So I wasn't lost after all." A candle beside the book flickered, and the soft whispers around him seemed to shift, gentle laughter, sighs, fragments of lives once lived. He could almost see them now, faint glimmers of people sitting where pews stood empty, faces calm, hands folded, eyes closed in quiet gratitude. He whispered to the silence, "You're not gone, are you?" The air shimmered faintly. And in that shimmer, he thought he saw her, the old woman from before, the one who had led the candlelight procession. She stood near the doorway, her form made of mist and moonlight, her eyes warm and steady. Her voice reached him like the sound of a breeze moving through long grass. "You found what you were meant to find." He stepped closer, his tone soft and wondering. "What is this place?" Her smile deepened. "It's a resting dream," she said. "Once a year, when the veil thins, we return, not to frighten, but to remember. To walk the paths we loved. To wait for those who need a place to rest." He bowed his head gently. "And me?" "You were searching," she said. "You carried the noise of the world upon your back. Here, the noise cannot follow. You can stay until you remember how to be still." He closed his eyes, and for a moment, all the noise inside him, every echo of his travels, every unfinished thought, dissolved into quiet. When he opened his eyes again, the woman was gone. Only the soft glow of the candles remained. He sat down in the front pew, feeling the warmth of the wood beneath his hands. The church smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. Outside, the mist pressed gently against the windows, moving like slow waves. He could feel the heartbeat of the village, calm, steady, and timeless. He stayed there for a long while, breathing in rhythm with it. Eventually, he stood, left the church, and began walking through the village again. The houses stood peaceful, their doors half open, candles still burning. He passed by one cottage and paused. Through the open window, he saw a table set for two, bowls of soup, a loaf of bread, a single candle in the middle. No one sat there, yet the food looked warm, as if waiting for someone to return. He smiled faintly, whispering, "Thank you for waiting." And he kept walking. The fog began to lift slightly, revealing the curve of the valley and the outline of the road leading out. The traveler felt a soft ache in his chest, not sorrow, but something close to longing. He knew he couldn't stay forever. But he also knew he didn't need to. The peace he had found here was his to carry. As he reached the edge of the village, he turned back one last time. The mist drifted across the cottages, the stream, the church, and for a brief second, the entire village glowed faintly, as if bathed in silver light. Then it faded, slowly, gently, into nothing. Only the sound of the wind remained, whispering through the trees. The traveler smiled. He whispered softly to the empty air, "Good night, my friends." Then he stepped forward onto the road, the moonlight guiding his way, the weight of the world a little lighter on his shoulders. Behind him, deep in the mist, a single candle flickered one last time and went out. The road stretched quiet beneath his feet. The fog was beginning to thin, revealing the faint shape of the hills ahead. The moon hung low, drifting slowly toward the horizon. Somewhere far behind him, the village slept, or perhaps it had already faded back into memory. The traveler walked slowly, feeling calm, not tired, just still. His breath formed small clouds in the cool air, and the night sky shimmered with faint traces of dawn, a deep blue melting into silver. For the first time in years, he didn't hurry. Each step felt like part of something sacred, the rhythm of walking, breathing, and listening to the soft sounds of the world waking up. He passed through a grove of tall trees. Their bare branches reached across the path like dark lace against the fading stars. In the silence, he could still hear faint echoes, laughter, whispers, the gentle toll of a bell that wasn't really there. He smiled softly. The village was gone, yes. But it had left something behind, a quiet that wasn't empty. He stopped by a stream and crouched beside it. The water was so clear he could see the smooth stones beneath, glinting faintly in the dawn light. He dipped his fingers in and felt the cold flow between them. The chill bit his skin, but it grounded him, a reminder that he was here, alive, awake. And yet, part of him still belonged to that place between worlds. He remembered the woman's words. You can stay until you remember how to be still. He understood now. The village hadn't called him by mistake. It had been waiting, not for him, but for anyone who carried too much noise inside. For those who wandered not to escape life, but to find the stillness beneath it. He leaned back against a tree, closed his eyes, and breathed in deeply. The scent of pine and damp earth filled his chest. A soft wind moved through the valley, brushing his hair, carrying the distant echo of a flute's final note. And for a long, quiet moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. When he opened his eyes again, the first light of dawn had broken over the horizon, pale gold and soft pink spreading across the sky. The fog glowed gently, dissolving into the warmth of morning. He could see the outline of the road stretching onward, endless, calm, patient. The traveler smiled, whispered softly to the air. Thank you for the silence. Then he began to walk again. Birdsong rose slowly through the forest, delicate and pure. The leaves shimmered in the early light, and the shadows of night retreated into the corners of the hills. He reached a ridge overlooking the valley below. When he turned to look back, there was nothing but trees, mist, and light. The village had vanished completely, not a single roof, chimney, or path remained. But deep within his chest, he could still feel its heartbeat, steady, warm, and eternal. He took one last deep breath and whispered, I'll remember. And as he walked into the dawn, the soft hum of the world returned, not the noise he had once fled from, but the gentle pulse of life itself. He could hear it now, the whisper of wind through grass, the rustle of wings, the slow trickle of water over stones. Everything was alive. Everything was calm. And he, the traveler, was finally at peace. The road curved ahead, leading toward new lands and new nights. But somewhere behind him, in a place that no map could mark, The village waited quietly for the next soul who needed rest beneath its lanterns. And when Halloween came again, and the fog returned to the valley, its candles would light once more. Its bell would toll softly through the mist, and the traveler's whisper would drift with the wind. Rest easy. This is your night too.
The story has come to an end, but the peace of this moment still lingers. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and feel your body growing lighter, as if all the day's weight is slowly melting away. This is the time when the mind becomes quiet and the heart only seeks calm. In this silence, you've listened to tonight's story, a story that gently opens the gates of sleep. If you enjoyed this journey, stay connected with Calam Sleep Stories 05. This channel is your companion for peace, dreams, and restful nights. Every night, we bring a new story, sometimes from distant castles, sometimes from the forgotten corners of history, and sometimes from the quiet streets of the heart. Your one subscription keeps this journey alive. Your like, your comment, they give us the strength to create more dreams for you. If you've already drifted into sleep, that's perfect, because that's the purpose of our stories. And if you're still awake, take one last deep breath and let calmness fill your soul. Remember, Calam Sleep Stories 05 will always be here for you, every night, with a new tale to bring peace to your mind and heart. Subscribe, like, and tap the bell icon so the next story of calm finds its way to you automatically. Now close your eyes and let yourself drift into the gentle sea of sleep. Dream softly, and we'll meet again in the next story. Good night from Calam Sleep Stories 05.